Hello, this is Will Faber from Art to Ride, and today we're congratulating Tytti and DJ on their new horse, Smiling Moticon. He's a 10-year-old Finn horse that they found and have purchased. This is Titti's first ride on the horse, and what a wonderful job she's doing with him already. In just his first ride, he's already stretching down here, and once again, just being ridden around in a pasture here. He certainly looks like a nice fellow who's going to be a lot of fun to bring along. Now we can see in silhouette there as he comes around, his back is not very well developed. He has a bit of a dip there behind the saddle, but as quickly as he's taking to the stretch here, and what a nice regular 4-beat walk he has, I'm sure it won't be long before he starts to develop beautifully for them. Looks like he has a great attitude and certainly easy to work with. Once again, we see there in silhouette as he comes around the dip there behind the saddle, and once again that shows you that the horse just has no top line development. Evidently this horse has been in pasture for a while. His previous owner had sort of lost time for the horse, it sounded like, and hasn't done much with him in a while, but it sounds like he might have had some pretty nice training to start with somewhere along the way, as he's certainly taking to the stretch right away, has a nice regular 4-beat walk. So that all looks really, really good. Even walking around in this pasture here, we very often today everyone is very concerned about the footing that they ride in. And when I started training horses, this is where I started training, was out in fields. Very few people had, especially in hunt country. There was sort of an attitude that you just didn't ride in rings and you rode your horses cross country and that sort of thing. So I grew up developing horses out in pastures and riding them, and I first started my career, I would often go to people's homes and this sort of thing, and work horses in pastures and things like this. So that's something I grew up doing all the time, and once again, thus the importance of developing your horses correctly, because they're able to get balanced on all 4 feet, so to speak, and then you can ride in all kinds of footing. We certainly when you talk about 3-day eventing, and especially fox hunting, where you really don't know what's coming next, that's why it's so important to have horses balanced over all 4 legs so that they can go over rough terrain, kind of like a 4-wheel drive vehicle, where when your horse is hollow and you're moving over rough terrain, you have a great larger chance of having a horse fall down with you, or step in a hole and fall down on you, that sort of thing. So getting horses working over their backs is very important to the safety of the riders. We try to stress this all the time, because a horse that is not working over its back is really not in balance. For instance, if you are going cross country, for instance, and you step in a bit of a hole, if you're on a horse that's working over its back, chances are it's going to skip right over the hole. But the horse that's hollow in the back is going to plunge right into it. Now, once again here, she's just trying to make a few halts with the horse, and obviously just sort of getting in touch with him, so to speak, trying him out, as I believe this was her first ride on the horse. But once again, what a nice fellow he is. He seems to be accepting all this very well. And of course, when we see, as Tytti wrote in her letter to me about this horse, he was very out of shape, and when she tried trotting him, it wasn't all that good, and of course the canter was even worse. As we could see, that's what would happen. So we want to stay away from the canter for a while and just develop this horse in the trot, though this looks a little better here. But we can see once the trot starts, the head comes up, and he looks like he's having a little more difficulty than the walk. But you're doing exactly the right thing to come back to the walk and just let him reestablish that nice swinging walk again. Once again, it's always that thing of never trying to push yourself through the wall, so to speak. When you encounter resistance with a horse like she did there to trotting, instead of trying to hold the horse's head down and fight your way through it, what we want to do is just come back to the walk and reestablish the walk work, and then try again. And of course, a horse that's been out in a pasture like this and hasn't been in regular work for a while is going to be very weak, and we can't expect them just to come out and go to work. So again, that being the biggest mistake that people make with horses, is thinking, oh, it's a big horse, it's strong. Well, they may be strong overall, so to speak, like a big person is strong, but that doesn't mean their back is strong. In fact, bigger people tend to have a lot of back problems. Same thing is true of horses. This is a better trot, though. Once he got into it, this is looking a little more regular, and he's starting to relax into that. So I'd say that's coming around quite quickly. Already starting to stretch there a little bit. And that looks really good. I like this horse. He has a really nice active trot to him and really has a nice swing. You know, as undeveloped as he is, he's already moving quite nicely for you. I like how you made that downwards transition. We didn't make it too sudden. He was able to step into that pretty nicely and get right back into that walk stretch again, which is, of course, what we want to do. We want to be able to reward a horse all the way along in its training, you know, so that we're not just constantly battling with it or nagging at it. So just even getting that little bit of better trot work that she just got, that was the right thing to do. You know, don't keep doing it till it falls apart and gets even worse. You know, reward each little success that you have with the horse, and you'll find the horses will be much more willing to do the work. You know, people say to me all the time, you know, my horse gets sour in the ring, and you know he doesn't like to do dressage. Well, that immediately tells me that you know the person doesn't know how to do dressage, or the horse wouldn't be hating it, right? Because that's the whole idea of dressage, is basically working a horse in a way that is acceptable to the horse, so to speak. You know, instead of having to turn them into slaves that we have to beat into doing everything they do. We want a horse to be a willing participant, and this one certainly looks like he is that. And, you know, for your first ride on the horse here, I think he's coming along beautifully, and you're going to have a lot of fun developing him. Looks like he doesn't have a whole lot of problems. His mouth is nice and closed, takes a nice contact as we see when he comes around, and we see his contact with the bit. He already has a nice little line of foam there around his lips, which tells us that he's keeping his mouth closed, and that tells us that he's accepting contact with the bridle. So that's a great place to start, because we have to get that before we can get anything else. I have one right now that I've been working on for almost a year that came with his tongue hanging out, and you know, from being severely ridden in draw reins, and boy, once they start that, it's very difficult to get it back in. So as I said, when we go out to buy a horse, you know, we try to find horses as much as possible that we don't have to undo a lot of bad training, because it can really take a lot of time. You know, the horse that's become afraid of the contact with a bit in his mouth and is hanging his tongue out the side, you know, that can just be a very, very difficult thing to get horses over. And once again, I like how you took your time into that. You didn't try to hold his head down or anything. You just took your time getting into the trot. But we can see that, you know, he's quite weak in the back, and once, you know, the trot work is not great yet, but I'm sure as soon as you get him home and begin working him on the lunge and getting him stretching into the contact a little more in the trot. But as I said, already for your first ride on the horse, I think he's doing absolutely lovely for you here. And you're doing just the right thing. You just bring your hands up a little bit, and that encourages him to stretch down, which is what we want to do. When the horse brings its head up, we don't want to try to hold it down. That will only make the horse resist more. We just follow upwards with our hands, and just don't let the horse escape that little bit of contact. And pretty soon they'll start seeking where they can find relief from even that little bit of contact. Once again, which even proves the whole idea that holding against a horse's mouth, how ridiculous that concept is, that you're going to hold 5 or 10 pounds. Someone wrote to me the other day and wrote this very long, lengthy description of how you must hold against the horse's mouth in order for it to develop. And I just think that's a very sad and misunderstood concept. So once again, really good here. I love how you did that. You didn't try to press it too much. You just brought him along, got him to relax a little more, and then you came back to this walk, which is what we always want to do. Come back to where the horse does work comfortably. Whenever we try to do something that the horse has to struggle a little bit with, which we can see for this horse even just trotting. He's not in very good shape. He's been in pasture for a while, she said. But he certainly looks like when you bring him along correctly, that's going to happen very fast for you. Once again, back in a better trot there. A little less resistive to the contact. I like how you made that downwards transition there. You didn't try to hold his head down. He stepped into it quite nicely and actively from behind. Once again, here the trot even looks better. I love how active this horse is behind, you know, for this size of a horse and this sort of thing. You know, he has a good flexion in his hocks. And that tells us a lot about a horse. You know, the only horses that are really, really difficult to train are the ones that are really straight behind, that just have almost no flexion in their hocks. So I've only ever told one person in my entire life that, you know, if they wanted to do dressage, that they needed to find a different horse, and that was a paint horse that just was so straight behind that it literally had no flexion in his hocks at all. And the woman wanted to be an upper level dressage rider. Well, this horse was just never going to get there. But this one I think is. So once again, congratulations to Tytti and DJ on their new horse. He looks like a wonderful fellow, and I'm sure he's going to love having you folks as owners for the rest of his life. And we all look really forward to seeing him develop and see what you can do with him. Looks like a really nice fellow. Now, this was at his original home. I think they already have him home by now. We look forward to seeing the next video. Great job, you guys, on finding another wonderful partner. I'm sure you're going to have years of enjoyment with him.